Daddy. That was the first thing Doris heard when she came around the back of the car. Not crying, not screaming, just her 3-year-old daughter's voice. Soft, certain, like she was greeting someone she had been waiting for. Doris stopped walking. Maya was crouched at the edge of the open trunk, head tilted, looking at something inside. Mia was standing right behind her with both hands pressed to her mouth, not scared, just stunned the way children look when something impossible turns out to be real. Maya, her daughter, didn't look up. Daddy's sleeping, Mommy. Doris stepped forward and looked into the trunk. The man inside was not sleeping. He was bound at the wrists with rope. His left eye was swollen shut. His shirt was soaked through with blood that had stopped being red and started being black. And he was looking barely, through the one eye that still worked directly at her daughter's. Doris knew that face. She knew it the way you know a scar. The way you know something that hurt you so badly it left a permanent shape inside you. She hadn't seen it in 3 years. She hadn't spoken his name in 2. Her daughters had never met him, had never seen a photograph, had never once heard her say the word father in any context that meant something real. And yet, Maya reached out her small hand and touched the rope around his wrists. "Why is Daddy tied up?" she asked. The man's eye found Doris. Whatever he saw in her face made him close it again. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was wrecked, barely air. "I know this is the last thing I know. But Doris, you have to listen to me right now. Please." She couldn't speak. "There are men 4 minutes behind this car," he said. "And they do not know about you yet. But if you're standing in this driveway when they arrive..." He stopped, looked at the twins, didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Mia had climbed up onto the bumper and was trying to touch his face with one hand, the way she touched things she felt sorry for. "Don't cry, Daddy," she said. He wasn't crying, but the look on his face, broken open and helpless, and 3 years too late, was something close enough that it didn't matter. Doris picked up both her daughters. She didn't say his name. She wasn't ready to say his name. "Get yourself out of that trunk," she said. "And don't you dare bleed on my floors." She walked into the house, down the dark road. A pair of headlights turned the corner, moving fast, no hesitation. The sound that woke Doris John was not the crash. It was the silence after it. She had lived on Sycamore Lane for 2 years. She knew every sound this street made at night, the Henderson sprinklers at midnight, the loose drain cover 2 houses down that rattled when a car rolled over it, the way wind moved through the oak on the east side of her lawn differently than every other tree on the block. What she heard at 2:43 a.m. was none of those things. It was a screech of tires, a heavy thud, and then nothing. No car alarm, no voices, no second impact. Just the oak settling. Doris was out of bed before she knew she was moving. She checked the girls first. Always the girls first. She cracked their bedroom door and stood in the dark for 3 seconds, watching the shapes of them breathing under their blankets. Maya curled tight like a fist. Mia sprawled wide like she owned the mattress, like she owned everything. 3 years old and already taking up all the space in a room. She pulled their door shut. Then she picked up her phone and went downstairs. She saw the car through the living room window before she reached the front door. Black luxury sedan. Half buried in the hedgerow at the edge of her lawn, one headlight dead, the other angled uselessly into the oak bark. Engine still running. Driver's door hanging open, the way a door hangs when the person who opened it no longer has the strength to close it. Doris dialed 911. She got through the front door and was halfway across the wet lawn, phone to her ear, operator's voice already asking her to state her emergency, when she heard it. A click. Small, mechanical, almost polite. She looked toward the back of the car. The trunk lid rose slowly. The amber interior light spilled out onto the grass like something being revealed, like a stage curtain going up. The dying driver's arm had slipped from the wheel. His hand had dropped onto the release button on the center console on the way down. He hadn't meant to. He was already somewhere past meaning to do anything. Doris opened her mouth to tell the operator what she was seeing. And then the front door, the one she had left, 2 inches ajar in her panic. 2 inches that felt like nothing. 2 inches that were a runway to a 3-year-old, swung open. She turned. Maya came out first. Of course Maya came out first. Then Mia, one hand on the doorframe, bare feet finding the porch step carefully the way Doris had taught her, cautious where her sister was reckless, slow where Maya was already running toward the light. Mia, stop. They didn't stop. They never stopped on the first call, and tonight was not going to be the night that changed. Doris moved fast across the grass, phone still in her hand, and reached them just as they arrived at the back of the car. Maya was already crouching at the edge of the trunk, head tilted, looking inside. Mia stood right behind her, both hands pressed to her mouth. Neither of them made a sound. Doris grabbed them both by the shoulders and looked. The man inside was bound at the wrists with rope. His left eye was swollen shut. His dress shirt, white, expensive, the kind of shirt that belonged in a boardroom, was soaked through on the left side with blood that had stopped being red and started being black. He was barely conscious. His head was turned to the side, cheek against the floor of the trunk, but he was looking at her daughters. Through the one eye that still worked, he was looking at Maya and Mia with an expression that Doris had no immediate word for. Not fear, not pain, not the wild panic of a man who has just been found by strangers in the middle of the night. Something else. Something that looked like a man seeing the two things in the world he had most wanted to protect, in the middle of the exact situation he had most wanted to protect them from. Doris stared at him. She knew that face. She knew it the way you know a scar. The way you know something that damaged you so completely it left a permanent shape inside your chest that you had just learned, slowly, year by year, to breathe around. She hadn't seen it in 3 years. She hadn't spoken his name in 2. Her daughters had never met him, never seen a photograph, never once heard her use the word father in any context that pointed anywhere real. And yet, Daddy's sleeping, Mommy. Maya, still not looking up, still studying the rope around his wrists with the focused calm of a child who has decided she is going to understand something. The phone was still in Doris's hand. The operator was still talking. She hung up. Maya, she said carefully. Step back from the car. Why is Daddy tied up? Doris crouched down between her daughters and the trunk, eye level with the man inside. She kept her voice low and completely flat. Who are you? She said. Not a question. A warning. The man's eye found her face. Whatever he saw there made him close it for a moment. When he opened it again, his voice came out wrecked and stripped down to nothing but the truth. I'm sorry, he said. I know what this is. But Doris, you have to listen to me right now. There are men 4 minutes behind this car, and they do not know about you yet. But if you are standing in this driveway when they arrive... He stopped. He looked at the twins. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Mia had climbed onto the bumper while he was speaking. She reached out one small hand and pressed it against his bruised cheek the way she pressed her hand against things she felt sorry for: hurt birds, tired dogs, her sister when she cried. Don't cry, Daddy, she said softly. He wasn't crying. But the look on his face, broken open, helpless, 3 years too late, was close enough that it didn't matter. Doris stood up. She picked up both girls, one on each hip, and turned toward the house. She didn't say his name. She wasn't ready to say his name. She wasn't sure she would ever be ready again. Get yourself out of that trunk, she said, without looking back. And don't you dare bleed on my floors. She walked to the house. Behind her, she heard the slow, painful sound of a man dragging himself over the edge of a car trunk with bound hands and broken ribs. She did not go back to help him. She had 2 daughters to get inside, a door to lock, and 4 minutes to figure out how to turn a 3-bedroom house on a quiet suburban street into something that 4 trained killers could not walk out of. She had been a crisis counselor for 6 years before the girls were born. She was good at problems. She was going to have to be better. Down the dark road behind her, a pair of headlights turned the corner, moving fast, no hesitation. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He made it through the front door on his own, barely. He caught the frame with his shoulder, found his footing, and stood in the entryway, breathing like breathing was a problem he was actively solving. His shirt was dark from the collar to the hip on the left side. His bound wrists were raw where the rope had been. He had made it 12 feet from the trunk to the front door, and it had cost him something he didn't have a reserve of. Doris already had the girls on the kitchen counter, feet first checking for glass, for splinters, for anything the wet lawn had put there. Maya was squirming. Mia was watching the hallway with the patience of a child who had already decided the man from the trunk was coming inside and was simply waiting to be proven right. The door opened. Sit, Doris said without turning. Kitchen table, now. She heard him move, heard the chair, heard the specific sound of someone lowering themselves into a seat, like the body requires negotiation. She put the girls down. Living room, blankets and cartoons. Do not come back until I say. Mia took Maya's hand and pulled her toward the hallway without a word. Doris watched them go and felt the specific coldness of a mother sending her children out of a room because what comes next is not for them. She turned on the kitchen light. Lee Dong-wook looked worse under it. She had last seen that face 4 years ago, across a kitchen table not so different from this one. It had been clean then, composed. A face that gave nothing away unless it chose to. Now it was giving everything away: the swelling, the damage, the gray underneath the brown of his skin that meant the bleeding hadn't fully stopped. She pulled the first aid kit from under the sink. Talk, she said, You've got 3 minutes. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. My father's second. Man named Park. He stopped, pressed his hand to his side, continued. 11 years inside the syndicate. 2 weeks ago, he made a deal with a rival organization, and part of that deal, another stop, longer, was me. Your own people put you in that trunk. His people. The distinction clearly mattered to him, not mine. Is there a difference tonight? He didn't answer. Doris snapped the kit open and looked at his side without asking permission. She pulled the shirt away from the wound through and through. Like he'd said, the entry and exit both dark and crusted but not actively bleeding. Bad. Not immediately fatal. A distinction that mattered only because she needed him functional for the next hour. She pressed gauze against it. He didn't flinch, which told her how much pain he was already managing that a little more didn't register. The driver, she said. In the car. Dead before the crash. His voice was steadier now, the information coming faster, like he'd found the rhythm of it. They shot him after they loaded me. Wanted the car moving as long as possible. The GPS signal would pull the cleanup team to the wrong location. It pulled them here instead. The tree stopped the car sooner than they calculated. My oak tree saved your life. Yes. Doris taped the gauze down, stepped back, looked at the clock on the microwave. 1 minute left, maybe less. She looked at him across the kitchen, at the man who had left before his daughters were born and arrived back in a car trunk and was now bleeding on her kitchen chair with 4 killers 4 minutes behind him. Will they negotiate? She said. No. Will they hesitate? He looked toward the living room, toward the thin sound of cartoons filtering down the hallway, toward the 2 children who had touched his face and called him Daddy without ever being told his name. Not for anything, he said quietly. Doris closed the first aid kit. Get up, she said. I need to show you the house. She was already moving. Doris moved through her own house like she was seeing it for the first time, not as a home, as a problem. Lee followed 2 steps behind, one hand still pressed to his side, saying nothing. She had told him to keep up, and he was keeping up. She hadn't told him to talk, and he wasn't talking. Whatever else she thought of him, he understood instructions. She would give him that. Front door has a deadbolt and a chain, she said, moving down the hallway. Chain's faster. I'll do that last. They'll come through the back first, he said. They always clear the exit routes before the entrance. She stopped, looked at him. Then tell me something I can use instead of something I already know. He almost looked surprised. He covered it quickly. Back door, he said. What's the lock? Standard deadbolt, key on the inside. Where's the key? Hook by the door. Take it off the hook. Put it somewhere they won't find in 30 seconds. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them. She was already walking to the back door. She pulled the key off the hook, opened the drawer beside the fridge, pushed it under the stack of takeout menus in the back corner, and closed it. 6 seconds. The car's still on the lawn, she said. GPS tracker in it? Yes. I can't disable it remotely, my hands. She looked at his wrists. The rope was still on. She hadn't cut it yet. She went back to the kitchen, pulled scissors from the counter block, and cut through it in 4 clean strokes. He flexed his fingers slowly, checking what still worked. The tracker, she said. They already have the coordinates. Moving the car won't help. I'm not moving it. She opened the drawer again. Past the takeout menus. Past the key. All the way to the back where she kept things she hoped she'd never need. She pulled out a slim black device the size of a USB drive. Lee looked at it. Where did you get a signal jammer? I was a crisis counselor for 6 years, she said. I did field work in 3 countries. You learn what to carry. She handed it to him. Range, 15 meters. Batteries full. He turned it on. A single green light blinked once and held. That gives us a window, he said. They'll lose the signal and assume the device was destroyed in the crash. It might buy us 10 minutes before they switch to thermal. Thermal imaging? They're a cleanup crew, Doris, not a neighborhood watch. She absorbed that without reacting. Then the basement, she said. Safe room, reinforced door, no windows. I built it when I moved in. Something shifted in his face. You built a safe room. I had 2 babies and no partner, and a job that taught me exactly what people are capable of. She looked at him evenly. Some of us prepared for the possibility that your world might find us, even when you told me it wouldn't. He had nothing to say to that. She moved to the living room doorway. The girls were on the couch under a blanket, the cartoon still running. Mia already half asleep against her sister's shoulder. Maya looked up when Doris appeared. Are we going to the basement? She asked. Doris crouched down. How did you know that? Because that's where we go when it's serious, Maya said. Matter of fact. 3 years old. Doris looked at her daughter for one long second. Then she picked them both up. Yes, baby, she said quietly. That's where we're going. Behind her, Lee stood in the living room doorway. He was watching his daughters for the first time without glass or distance, or 3 years of silence between them. His jaw was tight. His eyes were not. Tell me what you need me to do, he said. Doris was already moving toward the basement stairs. I'll tell you when we're down there, she said. Right now, I need quiet. 1 minute, maybe less. The basement safe room was not what Lee expected. He didn't know what he expected. Something improvised, maybe. A reinforced closet. A heavy door with a basic lock. What Doris had built was a room inside a room. Poured concrete walls, 8 inches thick, behind the original drywall. A steel door with a 3-point locking system that bolted into the frame from the inside. A ventilation shaft with a manual override. 2 cots, a water supply, a first aid kit that made the one upstairs look like a suggestion, and a small monitor mounted in the corner connected to 4 exterior cameras she had installed herself 18 months ago. Lee stood in the doorway and said nothing for 3 full seconds. Sit, Doris said. She was already settling the girls onto the far cot, tucking the blanket around them with the practiced speed of a mother who has done this 10,000 times. I need you functional, not impressed. He sat. She turned to the monitor. 4 camera feeds. Front lawn, the crashed sedan still there. 1 headlight cutting uselessly into the oak. Side gate closed. Latch down. Backyard dark. Still. The motion sensor light off. Street empty in both directions. For now. Talk me through how they move, she said. Entry points, order, timing. Lee leaned forward, elbows on knees, studying the feeds. 2 on the perimeter first. They'll check the car, confirm the body in the driver's seat, then sweep the exterior for witnesses before they ever touch the house. That's 2 minutes minimum. And the other 2? Hanging back. Watching the street. If the perimeter team radios clean, they come in. If they don't radio at all, they come in anyway. Faster. Doris pulled up the backyard feed and zoomed it manually. The oak tree at the east edge. The gap in the fence where the panel had shifted last autumn, and she kept meaning to fix it. The kitchen window she always left cracked 2 inches for airflow on warm nights. She had closed it 20 minutes ago. North side of the house, she said. There's a window in the laundry room. Single latch, old frame. It's the weakest point. Then that's where they go first. I jammed it with a wedge bolt from the inside before I came down. It'll hold for about 40 seconds against someone who knows what they're doing. 40 seconds is enough. For what? He looked at the monitor. At the laundry room camera angle. At the narrow hallway that ran from the laundry room to the kitchen, the only path deeper into the house. Funnel, he said. If they come through that window, they have one direction to move. 1 hallway. No cover. I know, Doris said. That's why I bought this house. He looked at her. She didn't explain. What do you have upstairs? He said. That I can use from down here. Nothing. You're not going upstairs. Doris, you have 2 broken ribs, a through and through on your left side, and 1 working eye, she said flatly. You are not a weapon tonight. You are a liability with information. So give me the information. Silence. On the monitor, the street feed flickered. A dark SUV rolled past the front of the house without stopping. Slow, no headlights. Both of them saw it. That's the Scout, Lee said quietly. How long after the Scout? 3 minutes, maybe 4. Doris turned from the monitor. She looked at her daughters, both of them asleep now. Mia's hand curled around Maya's wrist, even in sleep. Holding on without knowing she was holding on, she turned back. Then tell me everything about the lead man, she said. How he thinks, how he moves, what he does when a room doesn't go the way he planned. Lee looked at her for a moment. His name is Ryu, he said, and he has never walked into a room that didn't go the way he planned. Doris picked up the folding knife from the shelf beside the monitor. First time for everything, she said. They came without sound. That was the first thing Doris noticed on the monitor. No car doors, no footsteps on gravel, no voices. Just 2 shapes materializing out of the dark at the edge of the front lawn like the night had decided to stand up and walk. Perimeter team, Lee said. I see them. They moved to the crashed sedan first. Efficient. No wasted motion. 1 checked the driver. 1 circled the car with a small device in his hand, scanning for something, checking something, and then they both went still and looked at the house. Doris's chest was tight. On the cot behind her, Maya shifted in her sleep. The 2 shapes split. 1 toward the front. 1 disappearing around the side of the house toward the laundry room window. 40 seconds, Doris said quietly. 38 now, Lee said. He's fast. She watched the side camera. The shape appeared at the laundry room window, tested it once, twice, found the resistance of the wedge bolt, paused, 30 seconds, 20. The shape tried the window a third time, harder, and the camera feed shook slightly from the force of it, then stopped. The shape moved away from the window and disappeared from the camera angle. He's going around, Lee said. Back door. It's locked. He doesn't need a key. Doris was already watching the backyard feed. The shape came around the east corner of the house, tried the back door handle slow, quiet, like someone who already knew the answer, and then crouched down in front of the lock. She looked at the clock on the monitor. 40 seconds. Maybe less. Behind her, Mia made a sound. Not a word. Not a cry. Just the small, formless sound children make when sleep starts to loosen and the world begins to come back. A sound that in any other moment would mean nothing. In this moment, it meant everything. Doris was at the cot before the second sound came. She gathered Mia against her chest, one hand cupped gently over her daughter's mouth, not pressing, not frightening, just present, and put her lips against Mia's ear. Shh, baby, we're playing the quiet game. Mia's eyes opened, found her mother's face in the dim light of the monitor. Read it the way children read their mothers, completely, instinctively, without needing the words behind the expression. Her body went still. She was 3 years old, and she understood that this was not the kind of quiet game you argued with. On the monitor, the back door opened. Doris did not breathe. The kitchen camera showed the shape moving inside, slow, methodical, sweeping low along the walls the way trained men do when they are clearing a room they expect to be empty. He moved through the kitchen into the hallway, stopped at the bottom of the stairs, listened. The house gave him nothing. He moved to the living room, checked it, came back to the hallway, stood at the top of the basement stairs. Doris felt Lee go rigid beside her. The shape at the top of the stairs did not move for 11 seconds. She counted every one of them against Mia's heartbeat under her hand. Then his radio crackled, barely audible even on the monitor's audio feed, just a burst of static and 2 syllables in Korean, and he turned and walked back toward the kitchen. Lee exhaled. He's calling it clear, he breathed. He didn't find the door. The safe room door was behind the water heater, framed to look like a utility panel. Doris had spent $400 extra to make sure it looked like exactly nothing. Tonight, it was worth every cent. The other 2, she said. They'll be inside in 2 minutes. Yes. And Ryu? Lee looked at the monitor, at the shape moving back through her kitchen like he owned it. Ryu, he said quietly, is already inside. 3 years ago. New York. 2 a.m. Not so different from tonight. Doris had been 7 months pregnant when Lee came home with blood on his sleeve and a look on his face she had never seen before and never wanted to see again. Not guilt, not fear, resignation. The kind that means a decision has already been made and the only thing left is the damage. She had been sitting at the kitchen table of their apartment on the 14th floor, grading intake forms from the crisis center, bare feet on the chair, back aching the way it ached every night by 10 o'clock. She remembered the lamp on the left side of the table was the only light on. She remembered the city through the window behind him, all that indifferent light. She remembered thinking in the half-second before she understood that he looked tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. You're bleeding, she said. It's not mine. She put down her pen. He sat across from her, didn't take off his coat, didn't look at her stomach the way he usually did, that involuntary glance that she had never told him she noticed, that small gravitational pull toward the girls he didn't know yet were girls. He looked at the table. My father called a vote, he said, 3 nights ago. I didn't tell you because I thought I could manage it. A vote on what? On you. The apartment was very quiet. The chairman doesn't allow attachments, Lee said. It's not a preference. It's policy. Enforced policy. Anyone inside the syndicate who builds something outside it, a family, a life, anything that can be used as leverage, it gets removed. Removed, Doris repeated. Yes. She looked at the blood on his sleeve, dark, already dried at the edges. She thought about what removed meant in the language of the world he had never fully let her see. She thought about the girls inside her, their combined weight against her spine, the way one of them kicked every time she laughed and the other one only moved at night like she was keeping secrets already. So what was the vote? She said. Her voice was completely steady. She had learned that from the crisis center. Keep your voice below the panic. Don't let the room know how bad it is. Whether to remove you, he said, or remove me. And it was close. He finally looked at her. My father cast the deciding vote. He chose to let you live on one condition, That I disappear from your life completely. No contact, no support, no record that you were ever connected to me. He chose to let me live, she said slowly. Like it was his decision to make. In his world it is. We're not in his world. Doris. His voice broke slightly on her name. Just slightly. He pulled it back fast. If I stay, if there is any evidence that I am still connected to you, the vote gets reopened. And next time my father won't be able to protect you. Or the girls. She hadn't told him it was girls. He had said it anyway. She looked at him across the table for a long time. At the blood on his sleeve, and the resignation on his face, and the 3 years of carefully constructed distance he had always kept between his life and hers. A distance she had mistaken for intimacy because he had let her close. Enough to feel it, but never close enough to see past it. Get out, she said. Doris, you heard me. He left. She sat at the table until the lamp burned out. Then she sat in the dark. She never told anyone. Not her mother. Not her colleagues. Not the girls, who came 6 weeks later and looked like him in ways she refused to acknowledge for the first year and quietly catalogued every day after that. She kept one photograph. Just one. She told herself it was so she could explain him to them someday. She never asked herself why someday never came. The kitchen camera went dark at 3:11 a.m. Not static. Not interference. Someone had covered the lens with their palm deliberately, unhurriedly, the way you cover something when you already know it's watching you and simply no longer care. They knew about the cameras. Move, Lee said. I'm not leaving my daughters. I'm not asking you to. He was already on his feet, scanning the room. The monitor, kill it. No light. She killed it. The room dropped to near black, the only light a thin strip under the steel door. She could hear the girls breathing behind her. On the other side of that door, she could hear nothing, which was worse. On the one camera they hadn't found yet, the east exterior, angled toward the side gate, Doris had caught 4 seconds of footage before she killed the monitor. 4 seconds was enough. He came through the gate last, not first. The other 3 men entered ahead of him, and he followed at a distance, hands loose at his sides, no weapon drawn. He was shorter than she expected, neat. A dark coat, buttoned, hair flat against his head from the rain. He stopped inside the gate and stood completely still while his men moved toward the house. He wasn't watching the house. He was watching the street, the neighbors' windows, the position of the crashed car on the lawn. He was reading the entire scene, the way you read a page left to right, top to bottom, nothing skipped. And when he was done, he tilted his head very slightly to the left, like something had confirmed what he already suspected. And then he walked toward the house without hurrying. That was Ryu. A man who looked at a crime scene the way other men looked at a chessboard, not reacting to what was there, deciding what came next. Doris had kept those 4 seconds in her mind like a warning ever since. There's a loose board on the 3rd step from the top of the basement stairs, Lee said quietly. Does it creak? Yes. Then we'll hear them before they reach the bottom. And when they reach the bottom, he looked at the door, at the 3-point lock, at the water heater in front of it. Then we find out how good your door is. Doris moved to the shelf, hands finding what she needed without light, the folding knife, the steel baton, the spare key. She pressed the baton into Lee's hand. You said you could give me directions, she said. Yes. Then start talking. Ryu won't breach the door himself. He'll send 1 man to test the resistance. When that man reports back, Ryu makes the call breach or burn. Burn? Gas the house and wait. My daughters are in this room. I know. His voice was tight. Which means we cannot let it get to that decision. The moment they find this door, we move first. The 3rd step from the top of the basement stairs creaked. Both of them went still. 1 set of footsteps. Slow, testing the floor before committing weight. He reached the bottom and moved across the basement past the storage shelves, toward the water heater. A hand along the wall, finding the frame. Lee put his mouth against her ear. Now, hit the lights and open the door. I'll take the first 2 seconds. You take everything after. She hit the switch and threw the 3 bolts in one motion. The steel door caught the man full across the face. He went down before he made a sound. Doris was through the door in 3 steps, stripped the radio from his vest. She pressed transmit, and then she heard him. Not his voice first, his footsteps, coming down the basement stairs without any urgency at all, no rushing, no tactical descent, just a man walking downstairs in a house that had already become his, 1 step at a time, unhurried. He appeared at the bottom of the stairs and stopped. He looked at his man on the floor, at Doris standing over him with the radio, at the steel door behind the water heater that his man had not had time to report. He took all of it in. His expression did not change. I wondered when you'd find the room, he said, not into a radio. Directly to her, across the basement, in English that carried no accent and no emotion. Bring the children up, Miss John. He reached into his coat pocket and produced a small cylindrical device, held it up so she could see it clearly. Or we do this the other way. Behind her, from the safe room, Maya's voice, small, clear, cutting through everything. Mommy? Doris looked at Ryu. Ryu looked back at her with the patient, settled calm of a man who had never once needed to raise his voice to end something. She pressed transmit. Give me 5 minutes, she said. 5 minutes. Doris didn't have 5 minutes. She had 2 before Ryu made a decision that couldn't be unmade. She had asked for 5, because 5 sounded like cooperation, and cooperation bought seconds, and right now seconds were everything. She went back through the safe room door. Lee was standing, one hand on the shelf, breathing through something. She could see from the way he was holding his left side that the confrontation in the basement had cost him the tension, the cold, the injuries working against a body that had no business being upright. Ryu's at the bottom of the stairs, she said. I know. He has a gas canister and 3 men and my daughter's in the next room. I know all of it, Doris. She looked at him. At the damage on his face and the way he was holding himself together by will alone. Tell me there's a play, she said. Ryu wants me alive. That's the job. Everything else is leverage. He met her eyes. If I walk up those stairs, he calls off the gas. Gets what he came for. You and the girls become a secondary problem for a different night. That's not a solution. It's time. Enough for you to get the girls out through the shaft. He pushed off the shelf and stood on his own. I called people 2 hours ago, before the crash. Men inside the syndicate who are not loyal to Park. I gave them this address. They are coming. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. Lee. Shaft exits behind the garden shed, 40 feet to the back fence. Over it, through the Henderson's gate, and you run. He looked at the girls. Go, now. She crouched in front of Maya and Mia. We're going on an adventure, she said quietly. Through the tunnel, like the books. Maya looked at the shaft, then at Lee. Is Daddy coming? Lee was already moving toward the stairs. Daddy's going a different way, Doris said. Her voice didn't break. She would not let it break. Go, Lee said, without turning around. The shaft was 18 inches wide and cold and smelled like concrete and dust, and Doris kept her chin up, and her daughters moving and did not think about what was happening above her head. Maya went first, then Mia, then Doris on her stomach, elbows pulling, daughter's hands reaching back for her in the dark, and she focused on those small hands and nothing else. Upstairs, Lee climbed out of the basement and walked into his daughter's kitchen. Ryu was standing at the counter, not positioned tactically, not covering the exits, just standing, hands in his coat pockets, like a man waiting for a bus he knew would come. 2 of his men flanked the doorway. The 3rd was somewhere outside covering the perimeter, covering the shed, covering the fence. Lee did the math in half a second and kept his face still. You look terrible, Ryu said. You look comfortable, Lee said, in someone else's house. Someone else. Ryu tilted his head. The same small motion Doris had seen through the camera, something confirming what he already knew. You've been hiding a family, Dong-wook. For 3 years, in a suburb, in a house with a reinforced safe room and exterior cameras and a woman who carries a signal jammer. He almost smiled. I don't think this was ever someone else's house. Lee said nothing. Park wanted you dead, Ryu said. The chairman wants you returned. I work for the chairman. He pulled his hands from his pockets. Empty. Walk out with me now. The woman and the children are not my assignment. And if I don't? Ryu looked at the basement door. Then I finish the assignment a different way and the family becomes a loose end that someone else ties up next week. Lee looked at the man who had hunted him across 3 cities in 4 days. At the 2 men in the doorway. At the kitchen that smelled like his daughter's breakfast and his own blood. He thought about a shaft under the floor. About small hands pulling their mother through the dark toward a fence 40 feet away. He needed 90 more seconds. I have terms, he said. Ryu blinked, slowly. You're in no position. I have terms, Lee said again. And you'll want to hear them, because what I know about Park's deal with the rival organization is worth more to the chairman than my return. He pulled out a chair and sat down. Slowly, deliberately, like a man who had just decided he owned the room. So sit down, Ryu, and let me tell you what I know. Ryu looked at him for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair, sat down. Outside, beyond the garden shed, beyond the back fence in the Henderson yard, 2 small girls in red nightgowns were being lifted over a gate by their mother's shaking arms. 90 seconds. Enough. The sun came up at 6:14 a.m. Doris watched it from the Hendersons' back porch, both girls asleep against her, one on each side, their heads heavy on her shoulders the way children sleep, when they have finally decided the danger is over and given their bodies permission to let go. She had not made that decision yet. She was still listening. She had heard it all from the porch. Voices first sharp, overlapping, Korean moving too fast for her to follow, then the sound of furniture, then one gunshot, then silence that lasted long enough to mean something, then two more shots, further apart, deliberate, the kind of shots that are not a fight but a conclusion, then nothing. For 11 minutes, nothing. Then the cars, 3 of them, rolling past the front of the house without stopping. No sirens, no lights, the specific discretion of people who clean things up for a living and had long ago stopped needing to announce themselves. She had held her daughters and counted her own heartbeats and waited. Lee came through the back gate at 6:09 a.m., moving slowly. New bandaging on his left side, clean, professional, applied by someone who knew what they were doing. His right eye was fully open. His left was still swollen but no longer closed. He looked like a man who had survived the night by the narrowest possible margin and had not yet decided how he felt about that. He stopped when he saw her on the porch. She didn't get up. He came and sat on the step below her. Not beside her, below her, like a man who understood exactly where he stood. "Ryu," she said. Lee looked at the garden for a moment. "He made a choice," he said. "When my people came through the front door, he had 2 options. Stand down or finish the job. He chose to finish the job." A pause. "He was good at his job. He just wasn't the only one in the room who was. Is he dead?" Yes. She absorbed that. She thought about the man she had watched on that camera feed for 4 seconds, the head tilt, the unhurried walk, the canister in his coat pocket. She thought about what that man would have done to her daughters without a second thought, and felt nothing she needed to apologize for. The others? 2 surrendered. 1 ran. He paused. "They found him." She nodded once. "Park?" "In custody. The information I gave Ryu at the kitchen table was real. It was enough to turn 3 senior members against him before midnight. He has nowhere left to go. And the chairman?" Lee was quiet for longer this time. "He knows I survived," he said. "He knows about you, about the girls. There is no containing that anymore. Ryu's team reported back before my people arrived, which means the chairman already has your name, your address, the girls' names." He looked at the garden, at the early light moving through the wet grass. "He's not Park. He doesn't move on emotion. He'll take weeks to recalibrate, reassign, rebuild the chain of command after Park's removal. But he will move, eventually. So we have weeks, maybe a month. That's not very long." "No," he said. "It's not." She looked at him. At everything the night had done to his face, and everything the 3 years before it had done to the space between them. "Lee," he looked at her, "don't you dare make the next decision alone." Something in him shifted. Not breaking, not collapsing. Just moving the way something moves when it has been held rigid for so long. It has forgotten what it feels like to be anything else. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "Not the syndicate, not the chairman. This. The porch, the girls, the morning after." "I know," she said. "Neither do I." Maya stirred against her shoulder, opened her eyes, found Lee on the step below without surprise, like she had already known he would be there when she woke up. She reached out one small hand and put it on top of his. No words. Just the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old who had decided something belonged to her. He looked down at that hand, and Lee Dong-wook, who had built an empire on silence, who had survived on distance, who had spent 3 years being a ghost, because he believed it was the only way to keep the people he loved alive, did not pull away. He turned his hand over, and held on. The sun finished rising. Somewhere in the world that had tried to erase them, a chairman sat behind a desk and opened a file with 4 names in it. He was not finished. But then, neither were they.